Hey everyone, welcome to Season 3, Episode 19 of the Senstennial podcast. Today we're just going to be covering everything about the trade deadline that happened just today. So yesterday, actually, Ottawa went out and made a couple of trades. So we're going to talk about the first trade, which was Travis Hamonic from Vancouver to Ottawa in exchange for a 2022 third-round pick, which had originally belonged to Vancouver, that Ottawa had gotten in the Dadonov-Nick Holden trade. So we'll start off there, and Ben, and I'll let you kick it off. What do you think about the acquisition of Travis Hamonic?
Yeah, I would consider it uninspired. I think that, we went out and acquired a guy. He has a $3 million cap hit for this year and next. He has 7 points in 24 games played in Vancouver, so he's been out of the lineup a lot of the time. I actually don't know if it's an injury thing or if it's like he's been in the minors or scratched things, so don't quote me on that. But
I think it actually might have been because of his vaccination status. He didn't get it right away, so I think he wasn't able to play in some games.
Yeah, I recall that being the issue.
Oh,
too.
Really?
And then he was away for personal leave for a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So away for a combination of reasons. So don't necessarily read too much into like how many games he's missed, but I think it's fair to say that this is like at the very best an underwhelming acquisition. I mean, he's never had a positive Corsi in his career. 7 points in 24 games. This seems to have been done more or less on the advice of assistant coach Jack Capuano, who used to coach him in his Islanders days. And, we're digging deep into the recesses of, the last decade to, pull up, like some good words to say about this guy. It just seemed like a classic, like Sens, roster move of going out and acquiring a guy that doesn't make your team any better, that is going to become an anchor to, like one of our defensive pairings is going to drag down someone who should look better based on their own ability. And, doing it, with like our pro scouting essentially being, oh yeah, I used to play with that guy and it was 10 years ago, but I think he was pretty all right. It seems to be kind of like the extent of the pro scouting that we do, which is, obviously we're going to get into that throughout today's topics, and at the end we're going to extrapolate a little bit more about like the direction the Sens are going in, but I would just chalk this one up as an unforced error. And I mean, like, I might be surprised, we all might be surprised. He might be great, he might be a great character guy in the room, he might be like a good partner for one of our defensemen on the left hand side, but I'm not holding my breath.
What do you think of
that? It's hard because there was a point in time that, Travis Hamonic was one of the cream of the crop defensive defensemen in the NHL. Now he's just a shell of his former self. And this is where the biggest issue for me lies, is that we clearly cannot learn from our mistakes. You look at 2 seasons ago, they go out and get Eric Goodbranson and Braden Coburn. And then with this season, Hammonic had issues getting onto the team with his vaccination status. And from what I understand, he wore out his welcome in that locker room. I read something about that today, that he was not liked.
There's a tweet put out about that, so I don't know exactly like the legitimacy of that, but that is interesting if it's accurate.
I believe it was a quote that was on the Dollywall show, he used to be a TSN reporter, and then they axed the Vancouver TSN broadcast network there. So from what I understand, it was legit, and you just have to wonder, how many times do you have to use the word fragile with this team? But it's a fragile group, and you don't want to fluctuate with bad vibes. And I think I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I would say this this is exactly an unforced error, like Bennett said. And we haven't even talked about the fact that he was on waivers.
So
we could have got him for nothing.
No, so I actually saw that cleared up. So when he was put on waiver, that's when he was away from the team for personal reasons, tending to his daughter. And so apparently it was said amongst the league that he was being put on waivers. I can't remember the exact reason, but essentially it was part of that being away, which is why he was put on waivers. So it was kind of like a
group agreement decision to not pick him up.
It's kind of like when Spezza went on waivers, the NHL agreed nobody would pick him up because Spezza wouldn't play for anyone if it wasn't the Leafs. So I can't remember who it was, but yeah, somebody, I think it was Brendan Deltzer on Twitter who cleared that one up.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then, I'll rescind that statement. But at the same time, I saw a lot of things that were like, he played a lot with Quinn Hughes and Quinn Hughes always played better without him.
Yeah, that's true.
So a 3rd round pick for a guy that, very well could be like, they were trying to get him out of Vancouver. And, paying a 3rd round pick is relatively steep considering what went for 3rd round picks today.
Yeah.
And to me, like, it isn't even the fact that you can draft a relatively good player at 3 with a 3rd round pick if you have the opportunity. It's you can use that 3rd round pick to be an asset in a much bigger trade, or as an asset to get rid of a bad contract like Zaitsev.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about it is, and this maybe doesn't help at all. And I know when I heard this, I was a little like, Dorion, I don't know if this is the argument you think it is. But after the trade deadline, he did his presser and he essentially said that it's a catch-22 because people want the team to improve, but then they get upset when the team goes out and spends assets to try and improve the team. Now, I would argue that there were better ways to use a 3rd round pick, but Dorion's reason was that Vancouver wouldn't accept a 5th round pick for him and that Ottawa didn't have a 4th round pick. So they decided to trade their 3rd round pick. Now, to me, it's like, okay, Ottawa already has their 1st this year, 2 seconds, and before this trade, 3/3. So I could understand from their perspective how they said, okay, well, it's a 3rd round pick and decided to do the deal. But it's just too bad because a guy like Justin Braun, I know he's a UFA at the end of this year, but he went for a 3rd round pick and he's a right-handed defenseman who is still very serviceable in the league. And I'm not saying that Hammonic isn't serviceable anymore, but sometimes I question how much is left there. And man, like Bennett said, if next year he comes in and he proves us wrong, perfect. I'm just not entirely convinced that's going to happen. But anyway, we can get on to the next trade, which I'm kind of excited to talk about. So Ottawa went out and they trade Nick Paul with 44.5% salary retained and get youngish 25-year-old depth forward Mathieu Joseph and a 2024 4th round pick. And it's Tampa's, not Chicago's. Just because I know there was some confusion about that. It is Tampa's 2024 4th. So yeah, I'll kick it off this time with you, Matt. What did you think about that one?
I think it was a pleasantly surprised good deal. I think Nick Paul was really valued around the league for what he was going to be bringing to the team that he went to. And it's such a Tampa move, like the last couple of years going out and get Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman, buy low and getting like solid enough players. I think those players are better than Nick Paul, in my opinion. But I think Mathieu Joseph he was never going to get an opportunity anywhere near the top 6 in Tampa. And even the top 9 for him would be tough. Whereas with Ottawa, like he very well could be sniffing that top 6 position as of tomorrow. And very well, he'll be playing on the 3rd line for sure, because that's where Nick Paul was. I think it's a good move, and then you get a pick out of it as well. We didn't overpay for a guy who has a career 20 points, career high 20 points, and is a good penalty killer and good defensive player. Now we get a younger player who has the exact same amount of points this season, and has a little more defensive, or who has a little more offensive upside, but is still good defensively. So I think it was actually a really good move by Dorion.
Yeah, and Ben, I'll let you talk about it too, but I just wanted to get my 2 cents in. I agree. I mean, analytically, I know that's not the be all end all of a player, but analytically, he looks quite solid. He's known by Tampa fans to be a great PK guy, which is perfect because that's what Nick Paul was for the Sens. But also, I watched quite a few Tampa games last year in the playoffs. And even though he didn't always contribute, you could notice him on his shifts. He was a very noticeable player, and not in a bad way. He's got the speed, and it's kind of like Formanton, where if he improves on those hands a little bit, then that would definitely help out his offensive production. But maybe, like you said, playing higher up in a lineup rather than being stuck on the fourth line would do wonders for him. And same amount of points as Nick Paul this year, and I think in about 4 minutes average time on ice less than Nick Paul. So that's quite notable as well. But yeah, Bennett, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a like for like trade. We get a player that fulfills almost the exact same role as Paul did for us, which I think is good because his was an important role to have on the team as like a guy who is a solid third liner who kills penalties and does, has a high work rate and stuff. That's all well and good. And I wish we could have kept Paul. I think everyone wishes we could have kept Paul, but they were far apart in the contract negotiations. And there was a lot of debate, on Twitter about whether, Nick Paul is worth like a $3 million AAV, which is apparently what him and his camp are kind of looking for. I would say not really, for a guy that it's been demonstrated this season kind of has a hard ceiling as like a third liner because, when he has played in our top 6, he hasn't really looked like he's belonged there. And so getting a guy back who can fulfill a similar role in the team, we retain some salary, got a pick in return. I think that's all well and good. There's also a bit of a vibes angle here because Mathieu Joseph used to play for Saint Jean, the same QMJHL team as Thomas Chabot. So those guys know each other going way back, which is always fun to see, something that the Sens love to do. And I don't think it's the worst strategy in the world. It's definitely not the worst strategy that the Sens have employed in acquiring players. The worst strategy is everything else that we do. But that part is, that's all right. So anyway, yeah, I think it was a decent move. I think the guy Joseph has some potential upside, which is nice. He's a younger player, which is nice. All in all, kind of a like-for-like swap that has the potential to pay off.
And also adding to that vibes angle, so Dorion said that after he traded Paul, he called Chabot and told him that, he had traded Nick Paul, but he got a good player in return, he thought. And Chabot asked who. And then Dorion said, we got Mathieu Joseph. And so Chabot was all excited, said, yeah, nice. He's one of my best friends. So
there you go.
So yeah, it plays on that angle. It's kind of cool that Dorion called Chabot after and told him immediately. It sucks. I liked Nick Paul. I liked what he brought to the table, and I think he was a good depth player. But I also agree. I think that was his ceiling. A third liner. Sorry about my congestion, people. I'm still coming over a cold, but yeah, no. I think it'll be a good trade, and I hope that he doesn't light it up going into the offseason when the Sens need to then pay him as an RFA. I hope that he looks good, but doesn't, come in and play with like Stützle and then get, I don't know, let's say like 13 points in 20 games to end the season or something. And then anyway, but I do like the player. I like what he brings to the table. And I think that was a good addition on Dorion's part.
Yeah.
So those were the only two trades he made Sunday. Then he went into deadline day, and in the morning he had talked to James Duthie, and he had told James Duthie that he could see the Sens making a few more trades today, and that his phone had been quite active. So he, the first trade of trade deadline day was getting rid of the one, the only Joshua Brown. And I think Sens fans rejoiced when they had heard that Josh Brown, I was supposed to say Josh Norris. No, when Josh Brown was traded. So the Boston Bruins get Josh Brown, and they get Ottawa's 2022 seventh. 2022 seventh, but it's conditional. So the condition is that if Senyshyn plays 5 games with Ottawa before the end of the season, the pick upgrades to a 2022 sixth. Senyshyn was the other player included in the trade. Some of you may remember he was picked by Boston in the 2015 draft, a few spots ahead of Shabbat. So, so Ottawa gets Senyshyn, and they get a 2022 fifth, which is Boston's. Pretty good trade, all things considered. And we'll go Bennett. You first. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, I mean, this is just addition by subtraction, isn't it? Josh Brown was a liability to this team. He made every pairing he played on worse. He was getting booed and heckled by Sens fans at the games that I've been going to this season. He's just not a good player who made this team worse. So having him not play for us anymore is good. And I kind of don't even care who we got back. We did get a player back. We got, Zach Senyshyn, which means that in terms of our Zach quota for the day, we broke even, which is good. There should always be a Zach on the team, I feel. And so now we got a 2022 fifth, like you said. Senyshyn has since been sent down to Belleville in the AHL, where they feel that he can help push this team towards in their playoff push, which I think is good. It'll be a good experience for him. And if he can carve out a role for himself with the team later this season or going into training camp next year, then great to have options, great to have competition. But really, I mean, the highlight of this trade is just that Josh Brown doesn't play for us anymore because he was terrible. And that is good.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think he was consistently a defensive liability. I don't actually think he's an NHL quality defenseman. I think he's just 6'5". I think Hammonic will probably be an upgrade on him. I'm not saying it's going to be an expansive one, but I think if Josh Brown is an AHL 1 or an NHL 7th, Hammonic's probably sitting at a NHL 6th. I'm okay with that. I hope this sort of means that Zaitsev is going to be out the door sooner rather than later. I really like the getting Senyshyn just because I think it really bolsters the AHL lineup down there. Just gives our younger players another option on those top six forward lines. And the pick is fine too. And then we give up basically nothing for it. We give up a conditional 7th. I think this was a really good deal. And I think we were all in a good mood because, Forsberg had just signed as well. And
which
we'll chat about that. Yeah. So it was just all good vibes at that point, I think. And, best of luck to Josh Brown. Maybe he finds his way in Boston, but he was just an atrocious defenseman here.
We also are now on Team Tank for the Boston Bruins because Ottawa has their 3rd and 5th round picks in the 2022 draft. They acquired the 3rd round pick at last year's trade deadline when they traded Mike Riley to the Bruins. So we want the Bruins to do badly so that their picks are more mid-round than a late round. That's what we're hoping for here.
Well, giving them Josh Brown is a good start.
I know. Yeah, definitely. So right at the end of trade, or sorry, actually, I'm missing one trade. Another trade that the Sens made before the end of the day was trading Zach Sanford to the Winnipeg Jets. And in return, they get Winnipeg's 2022 fifth round pick. So a bit of a downgrade for what they paid to acquire him. But I think when they traded Logan Brown in a fourth to get Zach Sanford, he had a good track record. He wasn't always a consistent player with the Blues, but he showed that he could play up and down the lineup. I think when he got to Ottawa, he was mostly playing down the lineup, and that hurt his production. But I also found that it was hard to find him on the ice a lot of the time. And I know we've all discussed this in previous episodes, so we don't really need to dig too far into that. But at the end of the day, the Sens kind of downgrade their pick for having the player play for their team for about the full season. But I can't complain about it too much. I don't really think Winnipeg is going to go too far in the playoffs. So I think that pick will probably be a mid-round fifth. But you guys can weigh in. What do you think?
Yeah, same deal as Josh Brown, addition by subtraction. Sanford hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't really been anything. He's just been kind of there. He shows flashes of skill and brilliance even from time to time. He has one of our hat tricks this year, hilariously. But those are brief like interludes from periods of extreme anonymity where he's just invisible on the ice. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't even really look like he's putting in a shift. And so I think I heard people say today that DJ is all about accountability and effort and stuff, which is positive. And I think if we're trading a guy who has not shown that all the time, then it sends like a good message as well. Plus, it just seemed like he wasn't super happy here. I mean, like that's not like based on too much, but just like we have heard rumblings, and if you read between the lines of some of his press remarks and stuff, kind of seems like he hasn't had the time of his life here in Ottawa, personally, which I can understand. It's a big move, but I hope it works out for him. But not going to miss him.
Yeah. Generally a player that was basically invisible his entire career in Ottawa, other than a hat trick game and, a couple good games here and there.
He scored nice goals. Like he has a nice shot and stuff. But the thing is, he would score a nice goal and then, you wouldn't see him for 5 games. And then he might randomly score a nice goal again. But like he literally doesn't do anything in the interim.
And that's the funny thing. Like, he is a sizable boy. He is huge. And
he's a unit.
He's a unit. And frankly, like, he does nothing with that frame. Like, he doesn't win puck battles. He doesn't hit. He doesn't, do the stuff that you would assume somebody with his size would do. He can be very flashy. But I just like, I've heard a lot of, comments on his consistency and his work ethic and his play on the ice showed that. And you can read between the lines. He didn't really want to be here. And now he goes to Winnipeg where it's even worse.
Well, hey, at least they'll get to sniff the playoffs. So he has that going for him.
And I mean, they'll be in like the playoff hunt mode. And I think that's always a good thing to be in for a lot of players. And I can't wait for the Sens to sort of be in that situation. And it feels so far away. But we got a fifth for him. That Logan Brown 4th round pick that we gave up can very well be coming back because there are quite a few injuries on St. Louis right now. So he's getting into more games. If it's basically a Logan Brown for Zach Sanford trade and you basically give up a 5th round pick, or you get a 5th round pick for Logan Brown, then it's kind of a win. It's null and void, to be honest, though. Like, Zach Sanford is probably going to go into the annals of the NHL, being a fourth line guy that can't really produce when he's not playing with better players.
Right. Well, the final trade of the day was Ottawa right at the cusp of the deadline. They managed to get Michael McNiven, goaltender, who was actually traded from Montreal to Calgary for future considerations not too long ago. And then Calgary traded him to Ottawa for future considerations. So, wow, that future considerations guy is being traded a lot. But
got traded today as well with Nashville. He was on the move a lot.
So many trades. So they pick up a goaltender. I think this was actually a good move, not giving up an asset and getting a goaltender, because I think Gustafsson needs to be in Belleville, not just because of his recent play. I don't fully put that on his shoulders. I just honestly think that it'll be good for him to get regular reps in Belleville and have a chance at the playoffs. I think that'll be huge for him, and him and Sogard battling it out for that starter role in Belleville. That's pretty cool. And I think that having that kind of challenge is going to only help Belleville to really take another step and hopefully make those playoffs, because they definitely deserved it. Was it last year where they were trending, or the year before, I think, where they were trending to make the playoffs, and then the league shutdown happened. And that's when I think Batherson was down there and Norris and all that. So I think having Belleville get to playoffs will be nice, but it'll also be good just to go ahead.
Did anybody know that? Like, I just found this out. Apparently, Zach Sanford and Zub got into a fight at practice.
Yeah, apparently they had a bit of a brawl, but
when did that happen?
I think it was like a week and a half ago or something.
Why was this not in the news?
I don't know. I think people were just kind of like, it was just the news of the day. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, just reading that, I'm just like, I'm happy he's out of here. Like that guy. Sorry, we now have the E. I'll say heck that guy, and our producer can fix it.
We just have to put in a Sens goal horn over the swear.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that was all the trades that happened. Ben, I don't know if you wanted to touch on the goalie situation there.
It's a good opportunity to touch on the goalie situation, and I'll just transition right into, the Sens goalie situation writ large. Because, I think it's a good idea to pick up McNevin and just have him back up Forsberg for the rest of this season. I think it'll be really good to get Gustafsson back to the AHL, get him rebuilding his confidence. If they can go on like a nice playoff run with the Belleville Sens, that'll be really helpful for the development of a lot of the guys down there. Like you were saying, the Belleville was primed to have like a legitimate shot at like the Calder Cup in the season, the 2019-20 season that got shut down. We had Norris was having his breakout year down there in the AHL. Formanton, Brandstrom, all those guys were playing there, and they were poised to go really far. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because COVID happened. So I think Belleville are due to have an extended look at the playoffs, and it'll be good for the development of everybody down there. And then speaking of, McNiven backing up Forsberg, the other big move that the Sens did this morning was signing Forsberg to a 3-year extension worth $2.75 million a year for 3 years, which I think was a smart move. Murray's future with the team is up in the air at this point, given his inconsistent play and his injuries and everything. I think Forsberg has arguably been our starting goalie this year, all things considered. I mean, he's already played 11 games more than Murray, and Murray is done for the year. So that gap is only going to get bigger. He's outperformed Murray in just about every statistic: wins, save percentage, goals against average this year. And I think that he's earned a shot as, an NHL starter. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the team's plan next year. It might be a case of, if Murray's back and he's healthy and he's still with the team, they might kind of do a 50-50 situation. But, the discussion today was all about whether this belongs in the same category as the other times, the sense of like extended a backup goalie. on the run, on the back of, a couple of months of really good play. We did that with Condon and Hammond, Nielsen, all of those guys. But for all the reasons I said, I think Forsberg has essentially been our starter this year. I don't quite put that in the same category. And I think that we need some stability going into next year. And we know Matt Murray can't provide that at this point.
Yeah. And I think piggybacking off that, when you look at guys like Andrew Hammond, I think it was very predictable that his run of games was a flash in the pan. When I watched him make saves, like there were saves where he was in position and technically sound, and that's good. But there were a lot of saves where like he would sprawl across the crease to make some beautiful diving glove save or something. And that's just not going to work in the NHL on a regular basis. You don't get that lucky. And he made numerous saves that were like that in that run. And momentum's a hell of a drug. The race to the playoffs that the Sens went on there, hell of a drug. Motivation to get another contract for sure. And I know Forsberg in the same spot, he wanted to get a new contract. But for me, when I watch Forsberg, he is a guy who is technically sound. And I know comparing him to Craig Anderson, it's like, oh, well, yeah, because he was the last, stable goaltender the Sens had. But it's not just that. Like when he's in net, he never looks out of position. He doesn't make those diving glove saves. He did, although, make one of those against the Flyers the other night, where he was like kind of gloved it, I think, across crease or something ridiculous. But anyway, overall, though, he is in position when he's making saves. He's very aware of where the puck is. He tracks well. And yeah, he's already 29. But I think some goalies are just really late bloomers. And he himself, when he was interviewed by TSN 1200 today, said, the stability of being able to be in one city. Aside from that, I think he said getting a significant workload, working with Zach Burke. He said he was a great goalie coach and that him and Zach Burke have a very similar philosophy on the goaltending position. He was just riddling off a bunch of factors and why he thought his game had improved so immensely since he got to Ottawa. And so I think that really he is just extremely confident in his game now. Before he was being bounced around and he was like, I guess I'm just really not good enough to crack a roster. He has cracked a roster and he's like really taking strides and showing, I can do this. He has a .918 save percentage this season. And there are games where he has been lit up. It's not like there's rarely been any games and, he's always just had good results like Hammond for the most part in his run. No, he's had those devastating losses, but he comes back and almost every game after he bounces back with a solid performance. Every once in a while, there's a few goals that go in that you're like, but they've been happening less and less. And he's just consistently the best option for the Sens. And sorry, the one last thing I'll say for my rant, he said that the coaching staff having confidence and faith in him and the team having confidence and faith in him also really gave him a morale boost. And I honestly think that going to next season, if Murray can be healthy and play how he was playing for that 1 month stretch when he was healthy, that would be huge. And having Forsberg as your 1B would be awesome. We'll see what happens going forward. And I'll leave it at that. I'll let Matt get into it from his perspective.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent deal. Forsberg has been the guy most of the season. And for a good while, I advocated to sell high. But at the same time,
we all did.
You have to look contextually at the situation and see that I don't know if Matt Murray's going to be able to ever play a full season again, considering his injuries. He's been on the IR with the Senators 7 times. That's a lot.
In 2 seasons.
In 2 seasons.
Or actually, a season and a half.
It's like a season and a half. Yeah. He has had trouble finding his game. And this is where I look at the 3rd round pick where we gave up for Travis Hamonic, and I kind of look back at it and I'm like, that could have been a piece of the puzzle for a Matt Murray trade. A team like Arizona does not have goaltending depth. They don't. They signed Vejmelka, who looks like a solid backup. But if you can maybe coax them into taking Matt Murray's contract, and you give up a third and a second or something to that effect, you should probably do it. But now they're probably going to have to look at a buyout or trade in the offseason, because I don't think Matt Murray's going to play another game as an Ottawa Senator. So it's a worthwhile deal. And then next season you run a tandem of Swedes, and it'll probably go much better with both of them knowing that they can, share the net, have a little more consistency, and not have to worry about the whole merry-go-round with Matt Murray involved.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though, because after the signing happened, like when Pierre Dorion was doing the media presser, he said that he felt like Matt Murray would play before the end of the season. He said that he'd like for Sogard to get a game or two in. He said Gustafsson as well. He'd like to see him play a couple more. And he also said if Mandolise hadn't been injured, he would have played a game. So it's very interesting that all these guys, they want to get tested in some NHL action. I'm kind of wondering, now this is just a hypothetical. We don't have to get into it today. It can be a something to think on. But I kind of wonder if in the offseason, Ottawa leverages Gustafsson as a trade chip. It's just a thought I'm putting out there. We can think on it, but with his contract being not waiver eligible next season, it's just something to think about. Going back to Forsberg, though, Dorion also said that Forsberg is one of the hardest working players of, defensemen, forwards, goaltenders that he's seen in his tenure as GM of Ottawa. And then he brought out the advanced analytics, boys. Dorion advanced analytics. He said that Forsberg had a high GSAA, which is a goal saved above average, and that he was one of the top goalies in the league in that category. And he also said Twitter would go crazy though if he was wrong on that one, but which is pretty funny. But yeah, Forsberg's been providing excellent goaltending, and that's, I think, really all you can say. And I think at the end of the day, he earned that contract, and he's not like his predecessors, in my opinion. I like Anders Nilsson. I forgot to mention him, but concussions derailed and ended his career. He wasn't a bad backup for the Sens either. So
I think and contextualizing those signings is important as well. What a lot of us didn't realize, and it didn't come to light until recently, is like Mike Condon had a really bad hip issue that was basically like the end of his career before it even was able to take off. Yeah. And then Andrew Hammond, that was, you could see it coming a mile away. And then Nielsen, like, he was excellent. He was awesome. Yep. The signing made sense. He comes in, and I don't even think he gets to play the season after he signed, because he had the concussion, and the concussion kind of, it ended his career. So I think you look at Forsberg, he's playing the best hockey of his career. He's not getting hurt. All of these things are sort of looking like it's going to be a good signing. Yeah.
On that note, Bennett, did you want to add anything before we finished off here?
No, I don't have much to add beyond that. I mean, I think Forsberg has earned this opportunity. He's earned the crease this year, and I'm a little worried about the goalie shuffle that Dorion was referring to. I don't think that strategy really makes any sense. But practically speaking, I don't see a role for Murray this season, and maybe even beyond this season. So I think in essence it will be, Forsberg and one other guy for the rest of this year.
All right. Yeah. So next we'll pick it up, and we'll just kind of talk about what you guys think post deadline, how the team looks. I mean, I know there weren't a ton of roster changes, but a couple new players coming in, and just what do you think about the team going forward from here?
I don't know. I think it's been a really disheartening couple of weeks. not being able to see the consistency with the team because of injuries or shuffling in the trade deadline and all of these things, it begins to add up. And I, said at the top of the show, going and getting a defenseman like Travis Hamonic doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because they're probably younger and still veteran options, but younger options that are probably better. You mentioned Justin Braun, who's still better, but I think they're around the similar age.
Yeah, he's a few years older. Braun's 35.
Yeah. The issue for me, I think, will continuously come down to Pierre Dorion and his pro scouting staff. I don't think they are able to do what is needed at an NHL level. Dorion consistently takes things personally. In that presser, he was. They didn't have a 4th round pick, so they gave them a 3rd. And I mean, that seemed odd to me, when you could just be like, well, we're not going to sign Johnny Tyconic, so take him. He's from BC, probably would love to sign there. Look at your prospect pool, the guys that aren't going, probably don't have a future because you have the outlook at that position. It's not going to work for you. To me, that's such a ridiculous thing to say. You don't go out and say, well, we backed ourselves into a corner and we had to give them a 3rd because we didn't have a 4th.
Yeah.
My God. And then the pro scouting side of it, Hammonic is past his prime. Goodbranson was never hit his prime. And then, Josh Brown, all of these guys, look at all of the ins that have come into the organization through the players that Dorion is traded for or waiver claimed or what have you. Also, Victor Mete is still on the team. I totally forgot about that. I just I don't know. I have a lot of trouble thinking positively and looking to the future with this team, because we also just got told well, this isn't the final team yet, so have patience. It's bro, you've been telling us to do this for freaking 4 years now. How much longer can you keep expecting your fan base to do this? And look at the ticket sales. People don't want to go because your team is trash. And the direction is, it's very much going in 4 different ways. So if we're not a playoff team next year, I genuinely have no idea where I'm going to be sitting as a fan, because we're at the mercy of Dorion and his internal cap. And it's not even an internal cap. It's just this piece of crap at the top. And we just have no idea how much he's allowed to do. And then, being berated by some local reporter who has, no credibility other than talking about the Sens, so basically putting down readers every possible time he can.
Yeah, I think today he said how the local scouts or whatever,
online
the
scouts.
the local Twitter
or social
scouts,
media scouts, Corey.
Yeah, wouldn't like the Hammonic deal or whatever, and I kind of don't know why. And this isn't Dorion, this is local Sens TM reporter. Yep. But, I don't understand why they say that, because this isn't just people online putting down a player that Ottawa traded for. Look at how happy people were when they traded for Joseph. At least for the most part, I saw a lot of people were happy, and he's an effective bottom 6 player. So why wouldn't you be? And he's young, has upside. But like when you look at the Hammonic deal, it just didn't seem to make sense. And I think Ian Mendez was pretty spot on with one of his questions where he basically asked, like, you know, is Travis Hamonic like the top 4 defenseman you were talking about? And I think Dorion tried to almost navigate that very carefully. He essentially said that they think he could play in their top 4, which I think is a half yes. But then he said in the offseason, if they find something to improve the organization, they would. So to me, that kind of seems like you're fence sitting, because you're basically saying, well, if we don't find anything in the offseason, well, then we just didn't find anyone who's good enough to play in our top 4. But
that's not a good enough answer.
Yeah, like you could say that, if you don't find someone over the summer, well, we believe Hammonic could fit the top 4. But if you do find someone this summer, well, then Hammonic is now blocking, I would imagine, one of JBD or Thompson from making the NHL next year. But then again, Dorion also countered that and said, well, JBD or Thompson would play over Hammonic if they're better than him, which then makes me go back to his point of Hammonic could fit into their top 4. It's like, okay, so do they see Hammonic as a top 4 defenseman, or do they see him being replacement level? Because it's just weird. And so when you have an answer like that, it just is a little discouraging for me. Again, I like the Joseph acquisition. I was really happy with that when I saw he was the return. Fine with that. That's great. That's perfect. But yeah, like I think on the defensive side of things, I'm not sure what it is, but it seems specifically for defense, they just can't get it right. And that's really a struggle. And I think this offseason, if the Sens don't go out and acquire like a true top 6 forward who can play with Tim Stützle and a top 4 defenseman who can legitimately make the case that they belong either on the first or second pairing, then I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like it's ridiculous at this point.
It makes you question your fandom when you're seeing other teams that are in similar situations making different moves. I'm just becoming at a loss.
Yeah. Bennett, what did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah. I have a few things to mention here. I don't know if this is the last trade deadline that Pierre Dorion is going to oversee as Sens GM, but I think that it should be the last deadline that he oversees as Sens GM. If you told me that our pro scouting department didn't exist and it was just Pierre Dorion and maybe like Pierre Maguire, I would believe you. There is nothing in the moves that this team makes season after season that demonstrates that they have a single person in the organization who scouts professional players.
Well, Dorion said that he and his pro scouts with an S liked Hammonic. So
I just don't believe it. Like, why would I mean, like they probably exist, but it's like, in the case of like, we know how few amateur scouts that we have, for instance, like we know like from anecdotally and from like where we draft players and stuff that like we only have like 6 probably. And I don't know how much a normal NHL team has, but it's probably more than that. I'd be surprised if we had more than like 2 or 3 guys in our pro scouting department, and they all should be fired because we can't scout pros. Literally anyone with like an internet connection and access to NHL.com could tell you that guys like Hammonic and Zaitsev and Josh Bown and Zach Sanford and Goodbranson and Coburn and Michael Dosato are not capable of helping this team improve. Like this isn't like a tinfoil, like, oh, you have to really, if you dig into the analytical, like the advanced stats and the analytics, you can see that these guys actually aren't as good as they look on paper. It's like, no, they fail the eye test, let alone every other test that's out there. Like, we had Bruce Garriock like out here disparaging the online experts and stuff, but it's like, you don't have to be a professional, hockey person to sit there on TV, even just on TV, and watch guys like Josh Brown play and Nikita Zaitsev play and be like, these guys suck and they make our team worse and they make the players to play around them worse. Like, it's not freaking rocket science. And fact that our team, like the guys paid to run this organization, can't identify that is really disheartening. And I know you want to get in here, Matt, so just let me make one final point. somebody said this on Twitter, and I think it was Verada, and this is a thought that was rattling around in my head too. If the Sens were like a franchise in NHL, like the video game, and you just like simmed everything, if you just let them automatically draft whatever best player was like consensus available in the summers, if you didn't make any trades and guys just, aged out of contracts and then you replaced them with whoever you had in your AHL system, this team would be better. Like we would have a better team if we didn't have a GM. If we didn't have scouts or an organization or fucking anything, we would have a better, more effective roster than what we've been putting on the ice for the last like 3 seasons. Like literally, like the only thing that Pierre Dorion and whoever else is in the upper echelons of this team making decisions, the only thing that they're doing year in, year out is making this team worse.
Yeah.
And, at a certain point, you have to ask, what is the point?
Yeah, I would love to watch a game with these people or even like local reporter, because like I want to know what the they're watching. Like I want to know if they see something that I'm clearly not. I play hockey. I can recognize if a player is a good player just by what they're able to accomplish within the level of play that they're playing in. You can recognize player deficiencies regardless of if you're a scout or not. Mm-hmm. You can look. Let's focus on number 21. Oh, he's good defensively. He often doesn't create a lot of offensive opportunities. Oh, he just had a good shot. Let's watch number 3. Ooh. Oh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Like consistent, giveaways in your defensive zone, not being able to move the puck out of the zone, this, that, and the other thing. At what point can you just watch this? Like, how do you just have a free pass with your boss, knowing you're crap at your job? And then when, God forbid, fans that pay money want to have an opinion about this, and then they get berated by a local media guy and then the GM of the hockey team saying, oh, Twitter's not going to like it. Like, if Twitter's not...
No. He was also saying how after he made the Hammonic trade, he hadn't gone on Twitter, and that his girlfriend told him to stay off of Twitter. So then he didn't check it.
Yeah.
So at what point does it become like maybe somebody above him should say, I think it is a little odd that you traded a 3rd round pick for a guy that was on waivers. I understand that portion of it.
But as a cap dump, it makes sense.
But as a cap dump, the Vancouver was looking to move him. And then, there are guys on like Chris Tierney's still on the team.
I don't think he had any value, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I'm so annoyed by this, and Bennett, I'll let you continue because I know you probably had more in the chamber, but I just wanted to say I would love to watch games with these fellas and see what in tarnation they're seeing that I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I feel those are all good points, and I feel like I said mostly what I wanted to say. About like the direction of the team and the failures of our pro scouting and everything. And I know that we alluded to earlier in the season the threat of, well, if we get rid of Pierre Dorion, who takes his place? Because, this is a team that can't attract, talented front office people. We know that. Ottawa's a fantastic city. it's a lovely place to live. But the owner sucks, and the team is badly run, and we're kind of a joke around the whole league, us in Arizona, and it's difficult for this team to attract, it's so obvious that this team is run on just like a shoestring budget. It's like, I don't even see like the internal cap so much on the ice, but like the internal cap for me, the impact of it is more off the ice. It's the fact that we don't have decent pro scouts. It's the fact that our amateur scouting is bare bones, and we only draft guys from either Finland or the US National Team Development Program, because those are clearly the only places where we have any fucking scouts watching players. It's stuff like that that's killing us. It's the fact that, like, we have a bad GM, but we can't replace him, because who would we get in his place? Who would want to come here? Like I said this before, it's like when Montreal fired Bergevin. Like the whole world is like up for that job. It's like it's a huge franchise that has money backing it, and like it is competently run most of the time. Like every NHL team makes mistakes. I'm not saying you're not allowed to make mistakes, but you're not allowed to make the same mistake over and over and over again, because then you get fired. But Dorion, there's no one breathing on his neck, and he's not worried about losing his job, because like he knows that like who's gonna come here. He's the only guy that's willing to put up with like Melnyk and his nonsense. And the fact that he can't ice a competitive team, and he can't run a competent organization, and it's just so frustrating. And it's like, I don't think that this team is heading in like a positive direction. We are like at best spinning tires. And for every guy like Josh Ballin that we offload, we're bringing a guy like Travis Hamonic to take his place. And then, in the offseason, we sign guys like Michael Del Zotto. It's like, we're doing it to ourselves over and over. And it's just so tedious. And I feel for guys like Tkachuk and Norris and Batherson and Stutzler, who are the future of this team, who have to watch these just plugs come in every trade deadline and every offseason, who I'm sure they can tell in 2 practices are complete scrubs that aren't going to help the team at all. And they just must like feel like, throwing their gear down like a well and throwing themselves behind it, because to watch like all the work that they put in every game and every season get undone by a GM who couldn't pick a talented NHL player, if his life depended on it.
If he could literally watch video of him and be like, yeah, that's a good NHL player. Listen, Dorion's tenure started with one of the worst trades in Ottawa history, trading Mika Zabanijad to the Rangers for Derrick Brazard. Mika Zabanijad and a second for Derrick Brazard.
Yeah.
That is unequivocal.
Don't forget the 7th we got in that trade.
That to me, and just to put it into perspective, I think Brazard was traded for either a 5th or a 4th today. And Zabanijad has 70 points, something like that.
Yeah.
That set the tone, and it was not good. And I'll say, if you are an owner that has a couple $1 billion and you put $750 million into the Ottawa Senators, I can guarantee you that if you hire a competent GM, this rebuild is done by next year.
Yeah.
You have such quality pieces in place. All you need to do is surround them with other decent pieces, because whatever we have now isn't working, and I'm not sure it will for for next year, and I don't know when it will.
Fair enough. Well, I guess we can revisit this topic, I think, at the end of the season and after the draft, maybe, and see what happens there, if any trades, depending on who Ottawa picks in the top 5, where I assume they'll likely pick, and kind of see where it goes from there and see what happens in free agency, which is usually dull as a Sens fan, but you never know. There's always a Clark MacArthur type free agency where Ottawa picks up someone.
Or a Michael Del Zotto.
Or a Michael Del Zotto. Yeah, baby. So for everybody listening, watching, we are going to have a guest appearance on the pod, maybe 2 in the upcoming week or 2. So look out for those, because we're very excited to have those people join us. And on that note, anybody who's listening or watching, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit. Myself and Bennett are both on the Sens Discord. You can find us on all those platforms. The links are in our bios on our social medias. We have a link tree, and you can click on that and find all the links to all our socials and wherever you find our podcast. So thank you for listening or watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening, and
go Sens. And just
Sens. Go.
Do we
just Sens?
Okay, we're just gonna end it with a Sens 'em. We're just gonna Sens 'em.
I'm just apathetic, so Sens.
All right.
Whether they go or leave,
it's entirely up to them. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're gonna hit you with a Sens to end it off here, courtesy of Other Mad.
Sens.
All right. Catch you next time, everybody.
Later, Gators.